So, Colin, here we are, D&DD, we're here in Tel Aviv, interesting vibe, interesting things going on. What's your big takeaway here? What do you sort of feel about the conference and being here in Tel Aviv?
It's really impressive. I mean, everything with Tel Aviv Blockchain Week, today in particular, I think the organizers have done a great job bringing together different people to talk about different things. And one of the really interesting things for me was seeing people that are, the Bitcoin maximalists. Lots of people like to say, they kind of have their heads buried in the sand and they only focus on these things. Talking about DeFi and actually showing that they understand it and giving really, I think, thoughtful, objective critiques of what works, what doesn't, things that they like from it, things that they've learned from looking at that part of the industry, which I think is really optimistic. And they may disagree on technical implementations, but I think everybody that's looking at these people and saying, well, they don't care about us, they're just doing stupid stuff and they're going to fall behind, are really kind of missing a bigger picture that they have looked at. And I think it's a very positive thing for all sides.
Well, it's an interesting point you bring up there. I mean, there's a lot of I guess we could call negativity in the space, or internal bashing in the crypto sphere. People like to bounce around, hit back at each other all over the place. Now, yourself, you're a known jokester, prankster in the space. Not saying negative or positive either way, but I mean, what do you think in terms of that sort of split between positivity and sort of amping each other up, pumping each other up, and developing new things, but also making sure to critique the things that really do need critiquing in this still very new and developing industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's crypto Twitter is crypto Twitter, right? So I think it's great when people can give an objective critique to something, whether it's positive or negative. It's tough because we're dealing with a lot of money and there's a lot of people that don't really understand what's going on, and we're trying to figure it out, even the people in the industry. So it's good when people are not out trying to attack the person that's delivering a message, but it's also really great when we can kind of get into the depth of an argument of why somebody believes what they believe, either for or against any particular aspect. So I'd like to see more of that, and I think events like this are a great way to do that.
Certainly, and I want to speak to your history a little bit. So obviously one of the things that made you sort of famous, infamous in the sphere, the Pitch Token Classic setup, you got the shirt on there to prove it. Tell me a little bit about the process that got you into wanting to start that project, what it meant and what sort of came out of it. Give me the overview.
I mean, I'll be honest, beers were kind of the reason for it. Why not? No, we were at a conference in Seoul about a year and a half ago. A bunch of people that had been in the industry for a while, and it was still just kind of the tail end of the ICO craze, early 2008. And we were all kind of saying, well, there's so much of this, it's just garbage. We are people that are relatively known in the industry. We can probably come up with a garbage idea and make it work. And we never really had any intention to make this go anywhere, but we said, what is the worst idea? And we wrote down, this is the worst possible token. And we came up with this idea and we called it Pitch Token. We joked about this at the conference for about 12 hours. And then one of us bothered to actually look up online and realize that there was such a thing called Pitch Token. So we decided to call it Pitch Token Classic, of course, because we didn't want to infringe on their idea. But it is, I guess, one of those things that you see in an industry where a lot of money is coming in, a lot of ideas, new technology, lots of people are very optimistic. It's great. But at the same time, I mean, there are lots and lots of excesses. And we were just trying to point that out and showing maybe in a kind of funny, light manner, some of the things that are happening in the industry, maybe not to the same degree, but we wanted to show that a lot of what's happening and what people are seeing and getting excited about is maybe just smoke and mirrors at some point.
Right. And speaking of smoke and mirrors, all right, so 2017-18, the ICO boom. Then we moved to the next iteration, the STOs. Then we've had the IEOs that sort of had a failure to launch, at least so far.
It's an alphabet soup.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it is. But what's the next iteration? Is there a next iteration, or do people need to stop and just take some time to just manage what exists before going out to try and break new ground in that sense?
That's a really tough one. I think both on the future prediction and on where we're at. I think there are a lot of people that kind of pushed the boat out and tried an idea, and that's great. And I think being able to take a step back and say that didn't work and being very honest is a good first step on fixing some of these things. But at the same time, you need a lot of people come out and just kind of throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. I am very positive on when raising money through something like a token sale, whether it's an IEO, STO, ICO, that regulation comes into play because we are talking about managing other people's money. There's obviously different systems that are trying to move away from that, and that's fine too. But if we are going out doing something that's a tried and true method, and I'm American by origin, the U.S. has the SEC, and they have lots of rules about that. And if you sell to Americans or in America, that you need to follow those rules. And other countries have rules as well. But if you're trying to go out and build these systems that are impervious to laws, obviously you're going to take a different route, and that's great as well. So I think what we're going to start to see is more people kind of diverge into these paths where STOs, IEOs, whatever, go down the very tried and true method of regulation and how we can do that potentially with a better technology. Now, personally, I'm questioning whether these technologies improve upon that. And people that are going down the pure decentralization route, whether it's Bitcoin and trying to make a more robust network, whether it's trying to create privacy coins, or whether it's something more down the DeFi route. And I think a lot of that's very interesting. I don't know that it will all work, but it's great to see people trying experiments. And I think more experimentation is better than less experimentation.
Let me put something to you. I mean, do you think that the industry is still too run by people's egos? Do you think that has too much play in the industry and we need to get more involved in the sort of the larger scale, more regulated, more controlled spaces? Do you think there's just too much space for those and that's what's causing all these sort of new failure to launch projects that don't seem to go anywhere?
I think there's two things. I mean, there's the egos, there's what you see on crypto Twitter, right? And I think it's very easy for us to just assume that's how the industry works. And that's probably reflective of some of the things, but people are very different on the internet than they are in real life, as you see at these types of things. There are a lot of people that are out here for their egos. I raised more money, I did this, I did that, without really understanding what's going on and trying to fill in behind them. You look at, I'm not going to name names, but messaging applications that raise billions of dollars because why not? Or social networks trying to create some massive stable coin that will take over the world. I don't know if that's ego or if that's a business approach, but I think a lot of people really need to kind of take that step back, do the research. It's interesting that we're in such a new technology, new methods, and the academic approach hasn't caught up. The research hasn't caught up with what we're doing. People haven't considered anything other than purely how do I get this thing out the door, and that's great for entrepreneurship. But we need to catch up on a lot of these other things.
So then that raises an interesting point. A lot of people I've interviewed, a lot of people I've spoken to recently, both here at this conference and before, have said that there seems to be a bit of a sort of a pause for breath at the moment in the sphere. A bit of a moment at which people are sort of looking for identity, looking for the next direction to follow. Do you think that can be potentially healthy for the space? Well, firstly, do you agree that that's true? And secondly, if it is, do you think that's potentially healthy for the space?
I think in sectors of this industry that is true, and I think I would agree with you that on a macro scale for crypto, there's less new stuff coming out the door every day, and it's either catalyzing things that have already been launched in either the successful or the less successful buckets. But I think that there are different patches where people are really doing things that are innovative and trying new things that may or may not work, and really kind of pushing ahead. And that's great as well, and that's what I'm saying. But it would be very healthy, I believe, if we could have some more consolidation. And I think it's unfortunate. People probably disagree. I think it's unfortunate that crypto winter didn't last a little bit longer. We may go back into it. We'll see. It's maybe an Indian summer. But there are a lot of projects that are still kind of floating around that fell off the radar a year ago and still have a lot of money because they raised early or whatever, got lucky. And those things need to either find a way to deploy the money or find a way to return the money. And that's very difficult to do in this industry.
So there could be a bit of trimming of the fat, as it were, cutting off the anchors to tie the industry down. All right, and before I let you go, any particular projects you're working on at the moment? Anything exciting coming down the pipeline?
Exciting. I've been doing a lot of looking at the economic aspects of these. What I think will be very interesting is new metrics, new ways we can look at why crypto trades the way it does, prices the way it does. Kind of from my background working on a trading floor, those were the things that were very interesting to me. And I've been spending my time kind of working on those things, as well as looking at what's happening in DeFi, whether you ultimately believe these things will be successful or not. Putting them into the context of basic economics is helpful, and trying to understand what these things are, where the risks are, I think will be useful for people. So I spend a lot of my time on these things.
Colin, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.